Welcome to the matchup of the week. Sorry, I can't be as loud as I would like to be, guys. You know my excitement is usually a little higher than this. But Lauren's next door, and I haven't had a Wednesday off, so I have to do this late at night. Blah 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 blah. Anyhow, let's get back to the matchup of the week. It's against. Oh, I'm sorry, not it's against. It's with Despicable Me 1-0 versus Get Some 1-0. I'm sorry, Get Some. You got to do that because he's actually over 500 for the first time in 3-4 years, ever since his devastating loss in the finals to Brad. Oh, good times, good times. Anyhow, both actually come in with pretty solid teams. I know Get Some was underrated, I think, by Hugo in the preseason draft recap. I actually think Get Some is one of the good teams. I know he got a lot of injured players or post-injured players, but I actually think he has a very, very good squad. Despicable Me, obviously, I think is one of the best squads, especially if his receivers hold up and or his running backs hold up. Sorry, long day. Anyhow, a little bit into the matchup. We have Phillip Rivers going against Tennessee. He only had 13 points last week. They project him at 17 against the Tennessee squad. I definitely think 17 is in his future for this week. You got Arian Foster, Chris Johnson, Maurice Jones-Drew. Arian Foster was the only one who really showed up last week. Chris Johnson with 4, Maurice Jones-Drew with 8. Arian Foster did get 19. MJD and Foster are going against each other this time. Good news for Foster is Jacksonville, who just got 20 points put up against them with AP, is going to give a similar number up against Foster, so I think the 21 projection is right on cue. Chris Johnson against San Diego. San Diego did a very, very good job limiting McFadden, and I feel that McFadden is actually a more explosive runner than CJ2K, as he was once called. Chris Johnson, I just don't think has it as much anymore, and being on a very bad team, I just don't really see him climbing out of it. I'm going to say about 7-8 points for him this week. Maurice Jones-Drew. They're projecting him at 15. He had 8 last week. I actually think he's going to get about 8 or 9 this week, mainly just because I think Jacksonville's going to have to throw a little bit against Houston. I think Houston's going to take a big lead, and I do know that Maurice Jones-Drew is in on it, on the passing game a little bit, but also Houston's defense, very strong. I just don't see Maurice Jones-Drew going off that much. Maybe 13 points if he gets a touchdown. To receivers, Brandon Lloyd, Reggie Wayne. I really like Brandon Lloyd this year. I do know that New England and Brady are similar to the New Orleans Saints, is where they spread it out a lot, and a lot of the receivers, if you don't score on a 20 or longer pass play, you're probably not going to score, because the ones who are getting the looks down at the end zone are the 2 tight ends, Hernandez and Gronkowski. And the worst thing is, if it holds to be true, Ridley, the new running back who had the 2 scores last week, if he continues to get touchdowns by the goal line, I don't see the receivers getting much red zone opportunities, which really limits their value. So it's actually kind of happy that Despicable Me picked him up before I could. But anyhow, they're saying 15. I'm actually going to give him only 6. 60 yards and no touchdowns. Reggie Wayne, 15 points last week. Surprised the hell out of me against a better Minnesota defense. I know you're thinking, it's Minnesota. Minnesota is not the greatest team in the world. True. But they do have actually a pretty decent secondary. When you don't have to go against Green Bay all the time. Jermichael Finley against Chicago. Jermichael Finley did pretty decent against the 49ers. He had 10 points, one with the touchdown. So 40 yards, a touchdown. I see him getting about the same production yardage, 40 to 60, but I don't see him scoring this week. So 6 points for Jermichael Finley. Ravens defense against Philly. I told Brad that he was in trouble. They had the Ravens at only 8 points or 6 points. I told him the Ravens are going to score high, and the Ravens are what came through and won the game for Despicable Me. So he's got his defense to thank for giving him a little bit of offense. They're projecting him at 4 against Philly. Well, turnover machine that Philly is with Vic and McCoy and the receivers that hold the ball out with one hand and like it makes them run faster or some bullshit like that. Stupid asses. Ravens, give me 8 points for them. Mason Crosby against Chicago. Chicago with that bend but don't break defense. Good for kickers, not so good for everybody else. But Mason Crosby, they're projecting him at 12. I say he's actually going to get it right around 12 on that one. So that's good production for the kicker. Tony Romo, if we move over to get some. By the way, I think everybody on Despicable Me's team that is starting should be starting. No fill-ins. I might think about sitting Chris Johnson, but it's hard to sit Chris Johnson because you think he could explode. It's a really hard one. I would have tried to find a trade to get rid of him while his value is still high, because I think the longer and longer this season goes, the lower and lower his trade value is going to get. You might want to try to get rid of him as soon. I know everybody doesn't watch these things, so look, if you're watching it, try to get rid of him. Team gets starting Tony Romo, 23 points last week, projected at 16 against Seattle. I think he's going to go actually a little bit lower at 13. Seattle has one of the best young corner combos and safety combos with Earl Thomas and Chandler. They're very, very staunch defense, surprisingly enough. 13 points for Tony Romo. He's going to struggle in Seattle. In C-Link, it's a really, really hard place to play. Give me 13 for Tony Romo. Jamal Charles against Buffalo. 14 points. Love that. Right on the spot. Hell, if the Jets can put up 40 burger on you, Kansas City with their better offense definitely can. Beanie Wells against New England. He got 1 point last week. Really concerning. It's just really concerning that he wasn't really getting the touches that I definitely thought he was going to. I might actually sit Beanie and start Peyton Hillis. There's going to be plenty of touches to go around against Buffalo. That, if you don't want, you can't start another receiver because you got Steve Smith in your flex. I wouldn't really go with Felix Jones. It looked like DeMarco Murray is definitely the featured back there. Felix is going to get a few touches, but I don't think enough to actually warrant anything. I might actually start Peyton Hillis if I were you. Then we got Steve Smith projected at 14 against New Orleans defense. Like Steve Smith, I'm not crazy about Cam Newton. If you looked after Week 8 last year, Cam Newton was an average to below average passing quarterback. That's going to hurt stock in Steve Smith. 14 points, actually give me 8. Then we have Andre Johnson going against Jacksonville. You have to like that. They're going to be competing for touchdowns with Foster and Andre. Whoever gets more here is going to probably win this matchup in my eyes. They have Andre Johnson at 14. I'm going to actually say he gets 18. Brandon Marshall. Love Brandon Marshall. Great late pickup for get some. He's projected at 14 against the Green Bay's defense. Tell you what, Cutler looks at him a lot. Give me 22 points for Brandon Marshall this week. And look for him to keep doing that. There's not that strong of defenses in the NFC North. He faces them 6 times this year. 6 times. Plus, he doesn't have the hardest out of division schedule, except for the NFC West, which is like the AFC East in defenses. Tony Gonzalez, he knows I don't really like him. Going against a very good Denver team, he needs touchdowns to be productive. This week against Denver, he doesn't get one. Only 3 points for Tony Gonzalez. The Giants, they're projected at 7 to Tampa. I'm going to say right around there, maybe 6. Because Giants defense doesn't start getting their sacks, doesn't get their flow until later in the season. It hasn't just been their Super Bowl years, it's been all the time. So look for them to still keep with those low numbers lately. Robbie Gould in Green Bay. You got to love Robbie Gould. I think actually his fantasy value goes down a little bit this year because of the higher scoring offense, meaning that they're going to find the end zone a little bit more than they're going to be settling for field goals. 8 points does seem about right. Overall, projected ESPN has Despicable Me 117 and Get Some 103. I think it's going to be actually very much closer than that, than the 14-point spread that they're saying. I'm going to give Despicable Me the 2-0 start here, and Get Some will fall to 0-1, 108 to 94. Good luck, guys.
Matchup of the week.